It's no secret that the theme park industry is an expensive business, both on the logistics side and running and operating a park, but also at times for those visiting those places. One of the interesting things to track year over year is how prices change. You can do this in a lot of areas, both for rides being built, but also the guest experience. How much is parking? How much are tickets? And how do those prices in 2025 compare to what they were a decade ago or even longer? If you go way back, it almost becomes comedic. For example, let's look at the Giant Dipper at the Santa Cruz Beach Boardwalk. This coaster originally opened in 1924. As such, this is obviously built in a very different time, and I think about how different roller coasters have gotten in the last 100 years. It's pretty amazing that this is still operating as well as it is. That's besides the point though. Here's the point I want to make. The original fare for riding this coaster was 15 cents per ride. In 2025, it costs $8 for one ride. That's approximately 53 times more expensive. This is over the course of 100 years rather than a smaller sample size like 5, 10, or 15 years, but you still see the progression. Courtesy of a recent article from Finance Buzz, let's take a look at the last 10 years in the theme park industry, specifically at the 20 most popular theme parks in North America, and see how prices have changed. Let's start with the thing that a lot of people worry about, and that of course is ticket prices. If you want to go to one of these parks in 2025, the average ticket cost is $105 per day, which is a 37% increase from 10 years ago. In terms of these rising ticket prices, Disney leads the way with an average of a 69% increase in ticket prices. Disney's Hollywood Studios leads the pack with a 79% increase. A lot of companies, including Disney, use tiered pricing systems where busier days are more expensive, so that percentage in these numbers are based on the average price per day. In any case though, Hollywood Studios leads the way, followed by a couple of its teammates. Epcot at a 72% increase, Magic Kingdom at a 70% increase, Disneyland at a 68% increase, California Adventure also at a 68% increase, and Animal Kingdom at a 60% increase. I would argue that Disney's biggest competitor is Universal, and while Universal's ticket prices has obviously gone up as well, they definitely have not gone up nearly as much. The two Universal parks in Florida have both seen a 51% increase, and Universal Studios Hollywood has seen a 44% increase. You also have Knott's Berry Farm sandwiched in between Disney and Universal. In fact, Animal Kingdom and Knott's Berry Farm have the same percentage increase at 60%. With the 10 biggest increases in ticket price in North America in the last 10 years, you see two common themes: big brands and big markets. First, the brands. 9 out of 10 of these parks are owned by Disney or Universal, and I don't think it gets much bigger than that when you're talking about theme park brands. What's my evidence? Well, Disney's Magic Kingdom is usually the most visited park in the world every single year. And that's just one of these 9 parks, not to mention Epic Universe, which recently opened at Universal Orlando as well. Obviously that's not in the numbers because it just opened this year, but these companies have some of the most notable and famous theme parks in the entire world. Many families will plan years in advance to finally take a vacation to Disney World or to Universal Orlando and finally get to experience these places that they've heard so much about. Now, before you go right into the comments, I know what you're thinking. You're asking, wait, what about Knott's Berry Farm? That argument might work for 9 of these 10 parks, but what about Knott's? It's not a Universal park, it's not a Disney park. Does it have the brand to justify it? Couple of things. Number one, when you talk about regional parks, and Knott's kind of walks that line between being a regional and destination park, because a lot of people tack it onto a Disney trip, but I don't think a lot of people come from overseas just to visit Knott's. But regardless, for regional parks, I do think that Knott's is one of the bigger brands out there. Of course, this park goes way back, and a lot of people know it for the Knott's Chicken Dinner restaurant. That's of course essentially where this whole place began, and so I think for brands of regional parks, Knott's Berry Farm is up there with some of the bigger brands that you have. So they have a brand that for their type of park is among the bigger ones, but they also certainly have, number 2, a big market. Here's the one common theme that all 10 of these parks share. They are located in either Southern California or Orlando. Trust me when I say that this stat is no accident. If we're talking about small pockets of the United States that have great tourist attractions, it doesn't get much better than Orlando or Southern California for general tourist attractions, and certainly not for theme parks. So in both of those regards, the increase makes some sense, but 79% in the case of Hollywood Studios is still quite a big jump. It's not all bad news though. When you look at some of the legacy Cedar Fair and Six Flags parks that are in this top 20 list, you have some good signs. Kings Island was an 11% increase. Six Flags Magic Mountain, a 10% increase. Comparatively to what we just saw, this is a minute difference, but when you compare it to the rest of the legacy Six Flags and Cedar Fair parks, it's quite a big difference. If you keep looking down the list, you see a pretty decent drop off. Six Flags Great America has seen a 4% increase. The same can be said for Canada's Wonderland. Then down at 3% is Six Flags Great Adventure and Cedar Point. I was a bit surprised actually to see that the latter park especially had really not increased that much at all since 2015. I'm not arguing, but it did surprise me a little bit. So Disney is averaging almost 70% increase per park, and Cedar Point is over here at just a 3% increase. That's pretty wild. Now let's look at a few parks from the SeaWorld chain, or now known as United Parks. And these numbers are really interesting. Busch Gardens Tampa, SeaWorld Orlando, and SeaWorld San Diego have all gotten cheaper for your average day ticket in the last 10 years. Busch Gardens Tampa is the least amount of decrease among these at 6%. Then you have SeaWorld Orlando at a 9% decrease, and SeaWorld San Diego leads the way with a 13% decrease. Does this hurt my argument about big markets earlier when you have SeaWorld Orlando and SeaWorld San Diego both going down? Well, maybe, I don't know. These SeaWorld parks are just such a different animal than Disney or Universal parks. They have nowhere near the amount of draw. So much so that, in fact, at times, these SeaWorld parks in Orlando and California respectively are known as the parks in those regions that receive short waits. And, you know, when you look at the lines that some of these other parks receive on a daily basis, sometimes you just want to get on right away. You also have Hershey Park sitting there at an 11% decrease. That park kind of sitting by itself. In terms of the market and brand discussion, Hershey Park definitely leans more on the brand side, but they have brought their price down even though they've added some coasters in that time. So 16 of those 20 parks have increased within the last 10 years, but you do have a few of them that have decreased, which I think is kind of an interesting idea. The parks of the greatest fame and quality, though, definitely have seen the biggest increases. Another thing in addition to ticket prices that I wanted to highlight was the price of parking. This kind of goes under the radar at times, but parking can be a really expensive part of a theme park visit. At times, parking can be more expensive than your ticket. Take my favorite Six Flags park, Six Flags Discovery Kingdom, please pardon my sarcasm. If I remember correctly, it was $70 to park here a couple of years ago. To just say it how it is, that is absolutely insane. I don't necessarily mind parks charging for parking, but when you get past the $25 to $30 mark, it starts to become pretty egregious. To make it more interesting, some of the parks that were lower on the ticket prices increase list are on the high side for the parking price increase. For example, look at those top 4 parks. Kings Island, a 150% increase. SeaWorld Orlando and SeaWorld San Diego and Busch Gardens Tampa, 119% increase. Of course, you also have Knott's Berry Farm right behind them at 106%, and tied with Knott's is a few Disney parks. The interesting thing here is that the average increase for parking costs is 83%. Take a look at this fancy graphic here found in the article, which will be linked below by the way if you want to read the whole thing. 83% right there is the average, and all around it are the different Universal and Disney parks. At the top you see the parks from United Parks along with Kings Island, and then on the bottom you see the rest of the legacy Six Flags and Cedar Fair parks along with Hershey Park. Why Kings Island's parking went up so much more than a lot of these other places is a mystery to me. If you happen to have some sort of inside information as to why this is the case, please let me know down below. As silly as this might sound, parking is an interesting trend to keep track of. This is a moneymaker, and price increases in parking go a lot more under the radar than price increases in tickets do. Sometimes you can get almost blindsided with how much it truly is to park at most major theme parks. The main tip to take away from this is that you've got to buy your stuff in advance online, both parking and tickets. Do not fall into the trap of spending $10, $20, $30, $40 more dollars because you're waiting to buy your tickets at the gate. One last note is food and beverage, and I don't really have any stats on this, but I'd be curious to see what the price difference was on average for certain items in 2025 and compared to 2015. Restaurants and eateries and even desserts are generally wildly overpriced in my opinion at a lot of major parks. I know for sure that certain things have gone up pretty exponentially in the last 10 years, but as I don't have a lot of information for that, we should probably end it here. So there you have it, nearly 10 minutes of theme park statistics. If you enjoyed this video and found something interesting, please consider subscribing to the channel. We'll have more theme park coverage coming soon. With that, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.